Flukemaster Sterling takes on Henry Cejudo this upcoming weekend at UFC 288, and this is a fight that fascinates me because at first glance, it was a very clear pick in my eyes. An Olympic gold medal caliber wrestler taking on a grappler that fails the majority of his takedowns that also happens to be sloppy on the feet. On paper, Henry Cejudo is going to dog walk Aljamain Sterling. But the more I've rewatched their fights, the more I've realized that Henry Cejudo is a glorified, tough man who bites down on his mouthpiece and just has a granite chin and a will to win. That's who he is on the feet. And he has the whole game convinced that he's an absolute mastermind genius, when in reality, he's a phenomenal wrestler, as good of a wrestler as you can be, that is a really tough guy on the feet with a granite chin who likes to brawl. That's what he resorts to. And Aljamain Sterling has won plenty of fights with his striking alone and is not a Cyril Gane. I understand that this is similar to John Jones coming back to Cyril Gane because Jones took a long layoff and he's one of the all-time greats. That's what it looks like. But in this case, Aljamain Sterling is not a one-dimensional fighter like Cyril Gane. He is a well-rounded, extremely high-level guy that is not only pretty good on the feet, but one of the most dangerous grapplers in the sport right now, who also has a significant size advantage over Henry Cejudo, that also has an age advantage. What do I mean by an age advantage? If Henry Cejudo were to win against Aljamain Sterling this upcoming weekend, he would be the oldest bantamweight champion ever. And not only the oldest bantamweight champion of all time, but the oldest lightweight champion of all time. Deiveson Figueiredo, that's a name that should ring a bell. We thought that this guy was an old flyweight champion. When he had the belt last, he was 34 years old. It's been a year since he's had the belt. He's now 35, and he's still a year younger than Henry Cejudo, who is 36. Aljamain Sterling is going to outclass Henry Cejudo this weekend. He will outstrike him, and he will outgrapple him. That is my official prediction for this fight. And I understand that Henry Cejudo is the Ernest Hemingway. He's the Master Yoda of the MMA game, but he's old, and I do not think he will be returning in the same kind of fight shape that he came in to fight Dominick Cruz with. And I just have to say this about Dominick Cruz. Dominick Cruz is the least dangerous fighter you could ever put in a bantamweight title fight. Yes, he's a legend. Yes, he's the bantamweight GOAT. But as far as his ability to finish fights and present danger, it's basically non-existent. Marlon Moraes is a very tough fighter. He has a finishing threat, but he gasses out after a round and a half every goddamn time. And Henry Cejudo's mastermind adjustment in that fight that everyone loves to put on a big fucking altar and praise and get down and worship that fucking little adjustment, he bit down on his mouthpiece, walked forward, and out-toughed him with his granite chin and his will to win. That's one thing I do have to say that Henry Cejudo is an absolute beast at, which is his competitive mindset. He will never quit. Aljamain Sterling has quit in fights before. Aljamain Sterling has wilted before. We've never seen that from Henry Cejudo, and we probably never will. In order to make this guy quit, you have to put it, well, he won't quit, but you have to put him out cold. And I don't think that's going to happen, which is why I think Aljamain Sterling is going to outclass him. And the first order of business is the wrestling. Who has actually tried to take Henry Cejudo down? Because I've tallied up all the takedown attempts on Henry Cejudo throughout his whole career, and the number I have is 14. All of his opponents combined have attempted 14 takedowns on Henry, and he's defended every single one. He has 100% takedown accuracy. I know takedown defense. I know that Demetrius Johnson is credited for one takedown, but that shit never came. So I'm going to give Henry the benefit of the doubt. 100% takedown defense is pretty solid. But Aljamain Sterling is out here shooting 20-plus takedowns per fight, it seems, at this point. He attempted 22 takedowns against Jan in their rematch, and he only landed 2 of them, which were the ones that counted. Those are the ones that allowed him to bank the second and the third round, which ultimately led to him winning the fight. He shot 17 takedowns against Jan in their first fight. He only got 1 of them. He shot 7 against Jimmy Rivera. He shot 7 against Pedro Munoz. And I'm not even going to look into the TJ Dillashaw fight. It was against a one-armed man. I'm not even going to go over that. But my point is, Aljamain Sterling is going to go in there and shoot continuously on Henry Cejudo. He will get most of his takedowns stuffed, but eventually he will create a wild scramble in which he's able to get Henry's back, or he's able to get Henry down and put him in a bad position. That's what Aljamain is so good at. When he lands a takedown, he is so good at quickly snatching the body, wrapping a body lock in, or just cinching up a submission. And I don't think that Henry Cejudo has ever dealt with a grappler like Aljamain Sterling. I understand Demetrius Johnson is well-rounded, but he's not the grappler that Aljamain Sterling is. He doesn't have the long limbs. He doesn't have the same submission threat. I think that Aljamain Sterling is going to go in there and create some wild exchange to get the back at a couple of points in this fight. And I don't think he'll finish Henry Cejudo, although he could, because I think Henry's going to be pretty prepared to be able to defend a rear naked choke. But I think he's going to win rounds from that. And another thing I want to mention is Aljamain Sterling doesn't have to land a clean double leg, a clean trip, or a single leg takedown in order to get the back. He can climb your back on the feet in the center of the cage. In the fourth round of his rematch with Petr Yan, he lost this round, but he took Petr Yan's back on the feet. He just hooked a leg, got behind Petr, and went on top of his back, and Petr Yan shucked him off eventually. But the man can take your back on the feet too. That's how he was able to submit Corey Sandhagen. He doesn't need a takedown to do it. That's why he shoots so often. It's to create these exchanges. It's to put you into a reaction fight to where eventually, on the 25th attempt, you might make a tiny mistake and all of a sudden, Aljamain Sterling is backpacking you for the rest of the round or trying to submit you. I think that's how Aljamain Sterling is going to be able to get the best of Henry Cejudo in the grappling. I don't even think he will necessarily land a clean takedown. I think he's just going to be able to get it on the feet, hook the leg, and just climb up the back. And what a lot of people forget is, even though he lost the last 2 rounds against Yan in the rematch, he took his back in the 4th round and the 5th. Now, Petr Yan out-grappled Aljamain Sterling in the 4th round. He had about 3 minutes and 50 seconds of control time in that round, completely out-grappled him. And Henry Cejudo can definitely take Aljamain Sterling down too. I mean, think about the first fight that Aljo had with Yan. Yan took him down 7 times. So I know that Henry can take down Aljo. But is he dangerous on the ground? No. And does he have phenomenal control time? I wouldn't even say so. He can clamp onto guys, but he doesn't have the size here. Aljamain is a big guy. He is a very active grappler off of his back. He's going to be throwing up submissions. He's going to be scrambling for the life of him to get up to his feet or to create an opening for him to find a submission. I don't think that Henry Cejudo is going to have a lot of success in keeping Aljamain down if he wants to go there. So I'm led to believe that Henry Cejudo is going to go out there and try to knock Aljamain out on the feet because he knows he's against the odds with the size. He knows that Aljamain is a very dangerous submission threat on the ground. And at the end of the day, I think it's a kind of waste of energy because Aljamain Sterling, yes, you can take him down, but you're not going to have a lot of success there. Henry Cejudo isn't dangerous on the ground. He can't mount up a lot of offense. He's kind of like a Gilbert Burns, right? Gilbert Burns is a phenomenal jiu-jitsu guy, but he can't submit people for the life of him. He just doesn't do a lot of damage on the ground, but he can control guys. Henry Cejudo is similar in the way that he can take anyone down that he wants, but when it gets there, he can't really finish the fight. And I think that Henry Cejudo on the feet is also against the odds, not only because there's a threat of the takedown with Aljamain Sterling, which is always going to be in his head that this guy's going to be shooting takedowns. That's going to put him into a reaction fight, but also because the man has a 64-inch reach. He's got these little T-Rex arms, and he has to get in on the inside. And if he does try to get in on the inside of Aljamain Sterling, he's going to open himself up to getting, body locked by Aljo. Aljo's going to grasp his body and try to drag him down. He's going to get a hold of him. And so it's like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, because if you play at range with Aljamain Sterling, who has a reach advantage, a height advantage, a guy who's able to kick really fast, how are you going to beat this man? I think that Aljo is going to outstrike Henry. I think he's just going to pick and prod at him at range. Now, Aljamain Sterling has holes in his striking. He does. He leaves himself open to getting leg kicked. He doesn't check a lot of kicks, right? He's very random on the feet. He doesn't really set things up. But at the end of the day, it works. It's effective. And we've seen that against guys like Pedro Munoz. He completely outstruck Pedro Munoz, outlanded him by at least 20 strikes in every single one of those rounds. And then he failed 7 takedowns, but he still outstruck him. Pedro Munoz is a guy with knockout power, who has a granite chin, who's tough as nails, but doesn't have the reach. Same thing with Jimmy Rivera, outstruck him completely in their fight. And even against Petr Yan, he made a beautiful adjustment from the first Yan fight to the second. The first Yan fight, he threw the kitchen sink at Yan in the first round, and he got dropped because he was just throwing way too much and made a mistake and left himself open to getting countered. In the second fight with Jan, he did just enough to outstrike him. He landed about 19 significant strikes to Jan's 13. And a lot of those were kicks to the body, kicks to the legs, a step and elbow every now and then. He's very creative on the feet, but my point is, it doesn't take Aljo a lot to be able to outstrike you. He's a hard man to hit. He is pretty defensively sound. He's very good at getting out of range. And he will hit you if he wants because he's got the reach and he's pretty fast. This is the bantamweight division we're talking about. This guy's a well-rounded striker. And one thing I have to say is Aljamain Sterling has a pretty underrated chin. I know he got knocked out by Marlon Moraes, but like at the end of the day, the guy's taken some really big shots from Jan. Big right hands in their rematch, big right hands in their first fight as well. I know he was dropped, but he took like a flush flying knee in the 5th round against Jan in their second fight where, Jan was coming on strong and Aljamain started to slow down. Again, my official prediction for this fight is I think that Aljamain Sterling's going to outstrike Henry Cejudo in the first round. Henry's going to have a hard time closing the distance. And I think in the second or third round, Aljamain Sterling is going to be able to get the back at some point. And he's going to be able to at least get Henry down in a bad position, and he'll beat him up a little bit with ground and pound or attempt some submissions and just rack up control time. So I'm going to go with Aljamain Sterling, 49-46 by decision. I'll give Henry Cejudo 1 round at best. Although I'm picking Aljamain Sterling, I always like to give the guy that I'm picking against the benefit of the doubt. So I'm going to talk about how Henry Cejudo can beat Aljamain Sterling. The first thing I want to mention is investment shots. That's going to be Henry's key to winning this fight. Investing in the legs and the body of Aljamain Sterling early on to try to slow him down. Aljo moves around the cage a lot. That's how he's able to be a hard man to find on the feet. He's hard to hit because he's constantly moving. He likes to play at range. I think Henry Cejudo should chop down the legs of Aljamain Sterling. I don't see Aljo checking a lot of kicks in his fights. And I think that if Henry Cejudo commits to some big leg kicks early on, he can start to take away the movement of Aljamain Sterling. I also think that Henry shouldn't try to go out there and necessarily win the first round. I think he should understand that it's time to play the long game. Aljamain Sterling has a high output. He has a high pace. He's going to be shooting takedowns. He's going to be trying to create wild exchanges. That's when Henry Cejudo needs to be composed. His output should be low. Investment shots, chop the legs every now and then to slow him down a little bit. But other than that, I don't think he should try to get over ahead of himself and try to finish Aljamain Sterling. Of course, if an opening presents itself, take it. But I think he should go out there with a low output approach early on. The second round, third round, I think Henry Cejudo, as he starts to stuff more takedowns from Aljamain Sterling, he'll kind of feel where Aljamain Sterling's strength is at. Even if he gets his back taken, just don't get freaked out. And as soon as you get back up to your feet, continue to chop at the legs, continue to go to the body. Every now and then clinch up with Aljamain Sterling and land a couple of kill shots, a couple of knees to the body, a couple of knees to the head, the same knees he was able to land against Marlon Moraes. Think big, but not a lot of output. That's what I think Henry needs to do because Aljamain Sterling will start to slow down. You'll take away his movement. You'll take away the speed he has in his takedown entries, and he'll start to fade. You'll have energy for the 4th and 5th round, and that's when I think Henry Cejudo should really start to let his hands go. That's when I think he's going to have more confidence to close the distance. Aljamain won't have the same reaction time. He won't be able to evade strikes the same way. Henry Cejudo will build confidence in his ability to stuff the takedowns, and he'll just start to let it rip in the clinch. Big knees to the body, big knees to the head, elbows. Of course, every now and then he'll land a stiff right hand on the face of Aljamain Sterling. And I think in the 5th round, Henry Cejudo should go for broke and maybe try to take Aljamain Sterling down and rain on elbows like Merab did to Marlon Moraes, just rain down on him with big ground and pound and really just try to bully him and gas him out. Maybe press him up against the fence and tee off on him and try to beat his ass. I think that's what Henry Cejudo's approach should be. I think that the way Henry wins this fight is to play the long game. Start slow, low output, just chop the legs, really take away the movement of Aljamain Sterling. And then the later rounds, when Aljo starts to fade, when his movement is taken away, Henry Cejudo turns on the pressure and just bullies him and finds a later finish, a 4th or 5th round finish, TKO. I think that's how Henry Cejudo can get it done. As far as the most likely outcomes for this fight, I think that Aljamain by decision is the most likely. I would say that Henry Cejudo later rounds finish is maybe second most likely. Aljamain finish, a submission, or a TKO, I'm going to say is third. And I'm actually going to say a Henry Cejudo decision is the least likely. Now, of course, a fluke injury, a one-shot first minute KO, these are really the least likely things. But I think that because Henry Cejudo is against the odds when it comes to the range, when it comes to his ability to find Aljamain on the feet early, because Aljamain's so long and he's hard to deal with and he's unpredictable, and because of his high output with his takedowns and his ability to create crazy scrambles. I think that Henry Cejudo by decision, I just don't really see it happening. It's not that likely. So yeah, I think Aljamain's going to get it done ultimately. I really do. I think he's going to outstrike Henry early. I think that Henry's going to have a hard time finding him. And even if Henry Cejudo does chop down the legs, I think eventually Aljamain's going to be able to take him down. And that's going to wear Henry Cejudo out too. Those body locks, that takes a little bit of energy away from you. And I don't think that Henry Cejudo has this mastermind striking that Petr Yan doesn't. I don't think Henry's just going to be able to go out there and just TKO him in the later rounds. It could happen. But we also have to talk about the kind of shape he's in. I haven't really seen Henry Cejudo posting a lot of photos of himself. I remember leading up to the Dominic Cruz fight, he posted 100,000 transformation pictures of how shredded he was. I just don't know if he's going to be able to come in the same shape as he was in against those guys like, Dominic Cruz and Demetrius Johnson. I think he's going to be in worse shape. I think he's going to be slower. And I just don't think we're going to see the same Henry Cejudo. As I mentioned earlier on in this video, these lighter weight class guys, they fade as far as their career trajectory a little bit quicker than the heavier weight class guys, because the heavyweights can rely on their strength and their power, whereas the lighter weight class guys, they rely on the reaction times, their ability to be fast. I think that Henry Cejudo is going to be a little bit of a notch below what he was a few years ago. And because of the Aljamain Sterling size and the ability to play at range and how dangerous and tricky he is on the ground, I think he's just going to be able to outpoint Henry Cejudo. 48-47, 49-46. That is my official prediction for this fight. Henry can get it done. Absolutely. I could see him knocking Aljo out in the later rounds, but I think, Aljamain Sterling plays his cards right and he gets this one done. And we have to look at Aljo's best wins. I almost think that he has better wins than Henry Cejudo. I know Henry had a really impressive win against Marlon Moraes, but I feel like Aljo has those kinds of wins too. He kind of, schooled and bullied Pedro Munoz around a little bit. He kind of bullied, Jimmy Rivera around a little bit. And he submitted Corey Sandhagen in the first round. I think that's his best win. And he beat Petr Yan by decision. That was a convincing win in my opinion. Yeah, he lost the last 2 rounds, but the first 3 rounds were pretty cut and dry, clear for Aljamain Sterling. And other than that, as I said, Dominic Cruz is the least dangerous guy you could possibly put in a bantamweight title fight. The guy is not dangerous whatsoever when it comes to his finishing ability, and I think that Henry Cejudo can walk Dominic Cruz down and not have to fear anything coming in his way and not have to feel like he's in any kind of danger. And Aljamain Sterling is a finisher. Even on the feet, he can land a shot to catch you off guard. He can land a flush flying knee. He caught Petr Yan with some flying knees in the first round of their first fight. Some crazy shots that I was surprised Yan was able to take. And maybe Henry Cejudo, because of his age, maybe that chin is going to be a little bit deteriorated. What do you think about this fight? Who are you picking? Let me know in the comments. Until next time.